The Senate passed the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, and next week we anticipate that the House is going to pass it as well. This is leading people on one side of the aisle to say thank goodness the end of corporate landlords. Corporate landlords will be banned from owning single-family homes and their business models are ruined and they are screwed. Finally, we can stick it to Wall Street. And finally, this administration is going to do something for affordability. And then people on the other side say, wow, I guess we are going to have a lot fewer rental properties if this actually passes, which means there is lower supply of rental properties and rents might actually go up. Those are the main core arguments here. But in this video, I am going to provide facts to you about what just happened, how the bill just essentially got gutted, and it might not actually have the impact as advertised. And fortunately, because you subscribe to the channel, you will have that insight that you need. So when you hear about it, you could speak in an educated manner about it. So let us get started. First, the Senate passed the 21st Century Road to Housing Act back in March. It was a pretty clean pass with an 89-10 vote, and it was actually pretty bipartisan. You had both sides of the aisle say, you know what? We got to put our name on voting for this. And it was what was called the Elizabeth Warren add-in. And it basically said because we do not want to stop builders or big companies from buying homes that need to be fixed up and then rented out or building homes that they can then rent out. We are going to say they are going to be able to do that if they own more than 350 properties, but we are going to force them to sell it after 7 years. We will give the tenant a first look for the first 30 days, which honestly, quick sidebar on the tenant, buying a property that is actually not that bad of an idea. That is actually pretty good, because it lowers costs for the seller and the tenant who could potentially be buying. You can often save on commissions and you could save on other fees related to the sale, and it is overall easier to just sell a property to the person who is already living there. You do not have to deal with actually marketing the property. There are some downsides because you are not sure if you are actually getting true fair market value, but that could be a benefit for the tenant, right? But also vice versa if the tenant is paying a certain price and there is no other offer because the property was never on the market. Theoretically, the tenant could be paying a little bit more than what the property is worth. Obviously, everybody gets an appraisal, but you do not actually know what a property's true market value is unless it is on the market. So the idea with the Elizabeth Warren add-in was, all right, look, we do not want to discourage institutions from buying fixer-uppers, fixing them, and renting them out, or even better, building homes, building new construction homes, and then renting those out. And so what we will do is we will say if you own more than 350 properties, we will allow you to do that, but you have to sell them after 7 years. This freaked out a lot of people from both sides of the aisle in the House of Representatives. So the House of Representatives actually put together a letter, and I think about 76 members or so signed a letter calling this an assault on the free market. And the House version actually killed the 7-year sale, making the entire bill way less toxic. So if this 21st Century Road to Housing Act passes, what you basically have is a bill that says, hey, if you own more than 350 properties, which, mind you, is like less than 0.5% of all rental buyers in the country, you know, these are really big entities generally. These are not your mom and pop investors who are, you know, owning their home and then they move and they rent out the first one and they do that 2 or 3 times, right? And then when they retire, they end up having 3 rental properties or 4 rentals in their own home, right? Which is a fantastic way, in my opinion, to build wealth. But that is really a topic for a different video. What is most interesting is that because the House version killed the 7-year sale requirement, most institutions are looking at this and saying, that is actually not that toxic of a bill anymore. In fact, it might not actually change anything. See, a lot of people also, you know, they hear this act and they are like, oh, well, we know you have a real estate startup that, you know, does stuff in real estate. And that is true because we make real estate software and then we reinvest the profits from our real estate software into real estate. And we will continue doing that forever because I am a big believer in real estate, except the kinds of properties we buy are what I call like hantavirus properties. Like you go in here and you swoop up this mold or like the rat poop and you got a chance of getting the hantavirus and then you got like a 38% chance of dying and it is not good, right? Obviously, I am joking, and we have not had any properties with the hantavirus in it, as far as I am aware of. But the point is, like, this is not a livable property anyway, right? So when we buy fixer-uppers, whether it is that one I just showed you or I will pull up another one we finished, both of these last year here is just another example of one. And, you know, this one is, I mean, you do not want to live in this one either initially. You look at it, you are like, that is livable, right? No, it is just not okay, right? So whether you do this or you build new, which we also just did, and you know we bought new accessory dwelling units, and we are also building homes from scratch. In both of these scenarios, if the House version of the bill passes, which we actually expect it will, nothing actually changes for a company that either fixes up a property or builds a property to rent it out. The companies, those entities that hold more than 350 properties can still hold these properties forever. The 7-year sale requirement is gone in the House version. The House version released their text on May 14th, and that amendment is gone. On May 18th, there is going to be a vote on the bipartisan bill, which includes the House amendment. So we will see if that ends up staying all the way through. But that is the anticipation that we are going to see that House amendment included, which removes that Elizabeth Warren line, because she was the one who added it. And it is that 7-year sale requirement, which means now if institutions buy a fixer, like what I showed you, this was the one that I joked about with the hantavirus here, is the after of it. If a company invests and buys a property like this and then brings it to the rental market, which it was not previously part of the rental stock, they can actually keep the property forever if they want to. You know, at some point after 27.5 years, the properties are going to be fully depreciated, and companies are very likely often actually after 10 years to sell these properties and do a 1031 exchange anyway. And even though the 7-year sale requirement is getting gutted out of this bill, the bill is going to include things for grants for modernizing homes that could be for people who own their homes money to maybe help do energy efficient upgrades or whatever bathroom remodels, to be determined exactly what those grants are going to look like. There are also going to be grants for converting abandoned homes, like fixer-uppers like this, or converting office space to living space, so actually turning them into apartments or condos, and other affordability plans for first-time homebuyers. So really, when you look at the bill is really, in my opinion, going to turn into a stimulative bill for affordability on housing, some first-time homebuyer kicks, incentives, and incentives for developers who build homes. Who really gets hurt in this is the entity that says, we are not going to buy a fixer, and we are not going to build homes. We are just going to go buy homes that actually do compete with home buyers, or would be interesting for a home buyer to buy. We are just going to go buy those throw cash offers at properties that are move-in, ready, do no work to it, and rent it out. That is what the bill kills once companies own more than 350 properties. That is not what my company does, because again, we either buy really bad fixer-uppers nobody is living in, or we build from scratch, which is great because we are adding the supply, and my company is called Reinvest or House Hack because we have changed the name. But there are companies that do that, and they buy homes that are move-in ready. They do not do anything to it, and they just sit there and rent it out. So it is no effect to me, and in my opinion, it is really no effect to institutions. So it does not really matter. If anything, some of the grants are just going to help make it more affordable to develop or to remodel. Hopefully we will see, because every government policy always has hopes that do not necessarily work out the way hoped. But that said, if you hear this 350 housing restriction, remember, it does kill people buying move-in ready homes if they own more than 350 homes. But if they are buying a fixer or they are building it, makes no difference, and they can still hold the property in perpetuity forever. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Goodbye and good luck.